Okay, so we are live now.
Okay, cool. Hello and good morning to all of you present over here. I hope you're doing great. So today is one another interesting and innovative kind of workshop that we are having, and we have Bhushan Chitnis, who is a music producer, guitarist, and an ace musician who has been working with laureates in the industry, and I'm sure he has a lot to share with you guys. So let's get into the session right away. Uh, just a few pointers that I have for all the students. So if you have any questions, you can either drop it in the chat when the session is on, or else you can ask it directly to Bhushan. You can just unmute and ask it to him. So over to you, Bhushan. Here we go.
Hey, Atharva, thank you so much for having me. So basically what we're going to do today is I have this dummy vocal that I recorded yesterday of like a popular Bollywood song. And we'll, go through the process of how generally what I get and what I do with it, like when I'm assigned or like commissioned to do a music production job. Basically we'll just go through all the processes that are there and all the workflow hacks that are there in this whole job basically. So let's just go through what I get from the client or whoever has commissioned me. So let's just get right into it. So I get a simple wave file with a tempo written on it, and generally speaking is never the final vocal that I get. Is generally like a dummy vocal or somebody is just trying it out. If it's a cover, then it's obviously like, I know what it is. But when it's something original, I generally have no idea what it is. So in this case, it's a cover. It's a song sung by Nikhil D'Souza. The original is sung by Nikhil D'Souza. One of my very good friends, Sunit Zadav. So we call him Docky. So he just sent me this vocal. He came in and sang this for me. So we'll just go through what I get from a potential client, and I'll just guide it through the process. Right, so we'll just check it out. I just get a wave file, I import it into my session. So in case you're wondering, this is Reaper. I use Reaper as my primary DAW. So I'll let you know whatever other things that I'm doing, because there's a lot going on here. So slowly, I'll just break it down for you. Right. So this is what I get. I'll just play it through, and maybe you can, get a fair idea of what it is. Sure.
मेरे बिना मैं रहने लगा हूँ, तेरी हवा में बहने लगा हूँ, जाने मैं कैसे तेरा हुआ हूँ, मुझे तो लगता है मैं शायद तेरे दिल की दुआ हूँ। हाँ, तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया, अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए, थम जाए, बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमिया, तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया, अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए, थम जाए, बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमिया, तुझको जो पाया.
So this is basically what I get. Something very similar to this. Now, it's not going to be perfect because it's at the end of the day, it's a dummy vocal, right? So the singer or whoever is singing it, even though it's not like the final person who's going to sing it, it's still considered as a dummy. It's highly unlikely that it's going to be used in the final version. There are cases like that, but in this case, it's going to be the final because this is what it is, right? So I'm sure you've heard this song before. It's a very popular song. It's from the movie Crook, I think, if I'm not wrong. And there are multiple versions of this song, and there's a lot of people who've remixed it or like stuff like that. So what we'll do is we'll start with general things like what is workflow, first of all. So I like to define workflow as a default process that you follow, like irrespective of how creative you're feeling. It's like a key step to consistency, because when you are doing this as a job, it's not, you know it's not necessary that you'll always be very creative. So even when you have those days when you're not creative, a workflow, like a solid workflow, will always make sure that you finish the job and you are consistent with it. So in my workflow, like I try to explain what aspects there are and why it is so important. So the first thing, as I said, I just imported the vocals. The second thing that I do is I just time correct it. So I've done that already, but like basically some vocalists, when they're singing to just a click and when there's no groove and there's no like a rhythmic background or like some sort of guide, they tend to rush or they tend to drag, or there's a lot of things that happen in those areas. So I just cut the waveform and I move it around. Like say now I'll just make my grid to 16th notes and say this word. So what I've done is I've just cut this vocal like this and just moved it around, like literally I've done that. So once that is done, once it's pocketed nicely, that's when I just do some really basic EQ and compression just for me to get a feel for it. So in this vocal, I've just cut some low mids. So I just cut some low mids. I've cut some like honky frequencies. Then I've put like some basic compression. We'll get to this later in the mix stage, but just to get it out there, I've just put this stuff on it. So it's just consistent and I'm like comfortable to work with it, right? And there's like really basic pitch correction. So this is like the default real tune plugin that comes with Reverb. Okay, so now once you have that out of the way, what we can do is I like to think of a song as like a body of something, right? So basically, what is an anatomy of a song? So I like to look at a song in parts, right? So there is a verse, there's a chorus, like in an average song, an average pop song, or like any popular song. If it's like a little modern, there's usually like a verse, pre-chorus, chorus, music, then maybe like another verse, and then a bridge, then a chorus, and so on and so forth. So I like to identify that in my song when I get it. So now what I do is I like to place markers. So now I know that this song is still the first chorus, and then I've just copy pasted it for later. So we heard it through till the chorus, and there's this middle section that there is, if you can see. This is like the music section we'll make later. So I just like to place some markers. So this is where the verse starts. Right, so I'll just put a marker here. So in Reaper, you just press M and you create a marker. Another cool thing that you can do in Reaper is, like, I like to make a track which is called structure. Okay, so once you make that, let's just color it white. And you can insert an empty item. So I've made a shortcut over here as an empty item. So let's just call it a verse. So I just write verse over here, and then I'm going to stretch it till where I think it's the verse. So let's just hear it. Okay, so this is gonna go to so now this sounds like a pre-chorus to me. So let's just call it pre-chorus. And let's go to the chorus. So that's the chorus for me. See, I'm calling it something, but you can call it whatever you want. But it just helps me to, just divide it in certain parts so I can think of it like that, right? So now this is my chorus. तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया अब ये लम्हा
ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमियाँ तुझको जो पाया.
Now, this is quite a big chorus. Generally, this doesn't happen. This is an exceptional case. But generally, the chorus is like the most catchy part of the song, right? So it's not supposed to be this big, but this song is an exception to this rule. But music is all about exceptions. So the point is that you take this part and you go till here. Now I know that these 4 bars, I'm going to make some sort of music section here. So I'll just put that here. Call it music. Right. So, and then it goes to the verse again. So today we are going to work till the music section and we're going to bridge it to the second verse and then maybe just copy paste whatever there is. If time permits, we'll try and do some more ideas. So once that I've got this down, I'll just place my markers. So these were my structure labels, let's call them. So I would go to the pre-chorus. Now this is so this should start here, right? So I'll just go ahead and put in a marker here, pre-chorus and chorus. So this is our chorus till here. It's like a huge chunk. It's like what, 16 bars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's a very weird 14 bar chorus, right? But that's okay. We'll try and dissect it as much as we can. So what I really like to elaborate before I start anything is that every production that you do, it needs to have some sort of intention, right? If you're shooting in the dark, you'll just put in a lot of ideas and like you'll never really get to like a concrete idea. Is going to be some sort of like a khichdi of sorts. So what we'll do is now every genre has like its comfortable tempo, let's call it. If you look at any sort of genre, like ranging from like all sorts of electronic genres to any genre for that matter, every genre has a very signature sort of a tempo and a pace. Like a tempo can be changed here and there, but the pace, the pulse of the music is very important when it comes to genres. So now this song is 82 BPM, right? So for me, it is too slow for like a 4 on the floor sort of a vibe, like a house sort of a vibe. Like house music is somewhere around 120 to 140 BPM, right? So generally it's 128 BPM and all of that. Dubstep is 140 BPM, but it's half time. So cumulatively it's 70 BPM. Now this thing stays in that 82 BPM, 80 to 100 BPM sort of range. So which for me is like some sort of like a chill sort of a tempo, which is not half time, but I can groove to it. I can chill to it. Like, it's not very dancey. It's not very, generally romantic songs, like all those ballads and like all your average Hindi romantic song is going to be in this tempo range. So what we'll do is, once we've identified the tempo and like, because we get the wave file with the tempo itself, we're going to see that if what are we trying to do, So I like to talk about the 6 pillars of a good arrangement, right? So the vocals, obviously we've got it already. That's one pillar. The rhythm section, which is the drums and the bass and all of that. So that's one. Drums is one. Bass is one. The harmony elements is one. The space effects is one, which are your reverbs and delays, your whatever that creates a sense of space, right? So that's I like to call it a space effect. And SFX, the last, which is the most overlooked feature, like the most overlooked pillar, I would rather say. I mean, like all the SFX, any modern production needs SFX, because like nowadays we are hearing on good headphones and good speakers, and like, the reproduction of audio is really good these days. So you can add tiny elements which, make a lot of difference to your, your song, your arrangement. So considering these 6 pillars, let's just go start with something. If I have to choose something now for this song, I feel like I want to do the drums first. There's no rule as such, what are you going to do first and, stuff like that. But generally speaking, I'd like to do the drums first. Now I'm thinking chill, I'm thinking lo-fi, I'm thinking some sort of like, a very relaxing sort of a vibe. Because even the vocal, if you hear, it's not sung like a ballad, it's not sung like an anthem. It's like a chill ballad, right? So let's just start with the groove. So one really cool thing that I learned from a guitar player on YouTube called Tim Pierce is that he always starts, whatever he starts with, any idea he comes up, he starts with the chorus first, because the chorus is the most important, element of your song. And, you're the most creative when you start, like the creativity, you get tired, you slowly, start losing the creative process, and like you become a little, you start doubting yourself and stuff like that. That is things that happen when you're producing a song. Like there's so many things, right? So I think it's very important to be creative and take advantage of that. So the chorus is the most important part of the song. It's like the hook, people remember it, that is the face of the song, right? So I like to work on the chorus of the song first. People generally, what happens is they would go to the intro. Now this song starts with the verse directly. Let's do like a 4-bar intro. So 1 2 3 4 4-bar intro. Let's call this intro. So yeah, so people will start with the intro, they'll populate, they'll put all their drums and they'll put all their guitars, they'll put all their elements and like stuff. And then they'll go to the verse and they'll continue those elements. And when they reach the chorus, they can't make it sound bigger because it's already big, right? So that's a very important thing, that you start with the chorus and then, you make it into like a small hill of sorts. Like your chorus is the highest point and you deconstruct from there. So your, when you go to the verses, you need to, come down comparatively, right? So let's start with the chorus. So let's do the drums first. So I'll just minimize this vocal file and let's work on this bit, right?
Bhushan,
Yeah.
I just had a small question. So this is like for the client, and you have a vocal melody line and stuff, So suppose you are doing an instrumental kind of thing, like which is the completely your own track or something of that sort.
Right.
So what is the thought process for the structure at that point, and where do you start the production? Like, is it the same idea that you focus on, or is there anything else that you go around?
So basically what happens is like, again, it goes to the anatomy of a song. You need to figure out what are your sections. So say you are composing an instrumental idea, you have an A section and you have a B section. Just label it and work on those sections separately. So so the point is that when you isolate something, like that's what I'm trying to explain right now. When you isolate something, you can focus on it and you can pinpoint things and make it perfect. If you look at the global picture constantly, you'll always be confused. Okay, this is not sounding great, but this transition is great, and stuff like that. So you'll always be wondering what's missing, and it will never be foolproof. So that is why it's very important, as I said, to have a workflow, because even when you're in doubt, even when you are not creative at all, or like you've been working for a very long time and there is no way, you feel spent, like there's no way that you can't come up with something really cool. So you can use all these small tips and tricks to be consistent with your songs, because as a producer you have a sound, right? So your sound will dictate all the choices that you make, and production is all about choices. So the more isolated you keep your choices, the better it is for your energy levels also and your creativity also. So even if, as I said, even if it's like an instrumental song, the same rule applies. You just need to divide your song. You need to understand and identify what sections are what. So once you do that, you can follow this exact same process. So let's get on with it. We'll go to the chorus. And so right now I'm thinking
तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया.
So I'm just going to work on these 4 bars right now and not bother about anything else. Okay. So Reaper has this really cool sample browser. I hope you can see it. So these are all my samples that I've collected over the years, and like, some usual suspects, some sounds of Kashmir and all of those things, and some of the others that I've, found at random websites and Splice. So I use a lot of Splice, but we won't be going into that right now. These are some of the samples that I've saved on my hard disk. Splice is another workflow altogether, but I think this is a really cool way to go about it. So now I had a question yesterday about sound selection. How do you select sounds when you're making something? I think I'd like to quote Picasso here. Sounds really fancy, Picasso and all, but like, perfection isn't not being able to add anything in, it's not being able to take anything away, right? So it's very easy to overcrowd your arrangement. It's very easy to add this, that, do so many things, and like, just confuse the listener, and just give them too much information at the worst possible time. Because you as a producer, you're hearing the song for the first time, and when your listener is hearing the song for the first time, he has no idea that what sounds you've used, and why does that kick have like a cut at 200 hertz. The listener doesn't care. You need to capture the listener, and you need to have things very cohesive, and you need to have things which work. So one really cool thing that I always follow is I try to stick to a single sample pack when I create like a drum groove, for example. So say you're creating a lo-fi sort of a groove, which we will do right away, but you can't use like a house kick in it, like, because it's not going to sound, it's going to sound too big, it's not going to work. And I mean, again, this is not like a hard and fast rule as such, but there are things that, aesthetically it has to make sense. So say, let's make a lo-fi groove. Okay. So I like to start with a basic downbeat, right? So let's find a nice lo-fi pack. So I have these Slate digital samples, which are, let's go to samples, drums, one shots, lo-fi drum one shots. So let's just start with a clap. So I'll just hear like a sample which works out for me. I like this. So I'll just right click. I'll make a sampler track in Reaper. So this is one of my presets. I'll just share all the presets later. So I just import that in. Right, so this clap is in now. So now I need to record this clap. So I'll just wait and see because of the screen cap, but maybe make do with it. So what I've done is I've basically just added this clap, which is like the simplest element. Right, I'm gonna make it full velocity, and then now I have like a basic downbeat. Right, so now let's just add some sort of top layer. So I want some sort of hi-hat. So I'm thinking like a chill sort of a groove. I can't do that. I need to have, it needs to be chill and it needs to be nice. So I'd stick to 8 notes, or I'll stick to even quarter notes at some point. So either we can make a hi-hat a hi-hat loop, or we can just pick up a loop. Let's just try making one. If we take too long, then we'll probably just get a loop. So loading another sampler track, going to the hats. So we want like some sort of closed hats. I like this, it's nice. I like this one, small sounding. So let's just program in some hats. So how do I get rid of this zoom thing which is blocking my? Anyway, so now I need to make a hi-hat loop. I need to do right. So what I'll do is my grid is 16 notes right now. So I'll just drag this out and we hear it. Now this sounds super frantic, right? It sounds like so too busy. So what we'll do is we'll select every other note. So there's this cool script in Reaper called Note Selector. So we'll select starting every second note, starting from the second note. Right. So now we selected every other note and we're gonna bump down the velocity. So now even more actually.
तुझको जो पाया.
So we're grooving slowly. So we just copy paste that through those 4 bars. Just hold on. This thing. How do you minimize this zoom thingy? Anyway, should I with that? So
तुझको जो पाया तो जीना
feels
आया.
good to me. Now let's add some sort of an open hat. So I always like to add open hats when they approach a snare. For me, it is something that works for me. So I like this one. It's not in tempo. So let's just. So yeah. So let's do this. So I just imported a sample. I didn't use a sampler this time. So now.
तुझको जो पाया
So now
तुझको जो पाया.
sounds good to me. Now I'm just gonna repeat this. There has to be a way to close this. Oh, there's no way. Anyway, the zoom window is right on top of the close button for that. So
Yeah,
I can't,
it stays there. It stays there. Yeah.
can't get rid of it. Anyway, so you'll just have to look at that, but we'll have to use it at some point because there are a bunch of. So we'll just make it small. Cool, it's gone for now. Just make it small.
तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया. अब ये
So now every 4 bars, I try to make something interesting so that the listener is hooked and listener doesn't get bored in general. So let's just look for some perks. By perks, I mean percussion. So I'm thinking.
तुझको जो पाया.
So let's just add that in. So I just got some percussion.
तुझको जो पाया.
Right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clip gain this a little lesser. So it's gonna be. So the second one is gonna be louder. So it sounds natural.
तुझको जो पाया.
So now what I like to do is I like to pitch whatever things that all my drum elements or whatever that I'm putting in, I like to pitch it to the song. Now this doesn't feel right to me. I mean, there is a key somewhere. It's there, right? But like it doesn't feel right to me. So let's try pitching it up. So I've put like these small buttons over here which pitch up and pitch down certain things. So let's just hear it with the vocal and let's see if it works. I think it can go up maybe. Yeah, this feels so much better, right? The pitched up version matches better with the vocals. And even in your like master EQ, like in your spectrum analyzer, which is here. So I have it on my monitoring effects. Right, so it sits really well. The frequencies are in key. At the end of the day, any EQ you open is at the end of this like a big piano, right? So there are certain frequencies and certain frequencies are in the key of your song. So I like to keep as much as possible, like I try my best to keep all of my elements in the key of the song. Now this is A major. So I'm not looking at it, okay, isko C sharp karne ka. It's not like that. It just has to feel right. As a musician, you know what sounds weird, outright weird. Most people, when they are selecting samples, most of the samples are great, but they are not in key. So they sound a little off. And then they have an argument like, oh, but I used a trap kit for my trap song, but my kick is, sounding weird. It's not sitting with the basses because the kick frequency is not correct. It's not with the song. So that is why I like to pitch things around and just see. Even if it sounds fine to me, I'll just for the sake of it, I'll change it around and I'll do that. So now I have made this groove and now I need some sort of fill here at the end of the 4 bars. So I need some sort of toms, let's say, or like, something, some sort of toms. So let's use a rim. So I'll get this here again. So my grid is on 16th notes, so that is why I can place it on the grid very easily. Again, I'll do the same thing. I'll this hit, I'll turn it down a little bit so it seems like a drummer played it. Because see, if a drummer plays with two hands, the first note is going to be loud, the second note is going to be a little soft, and the third note is going to be on his dominant hand, you know. So that is why it's going to be taka taka. So that's how it sounds so natural. It sounds like a human played it. Right now, now my top layer is done. Now I'm gonna do some kicks. So I'm thinking. So let's try and play that in, or like I'll just program it because there's a bunch of latency. Let's find a kick that sounds nice. Oh, this one sounds really nice to me. It's like fat and nutritious. So we'll use that. There's another kick channel here. So I just drag this into new tracks. Let's call this kick. So I just turned it down because it's too loud. I'd like to put this here. So nice. So I'm just gonna take this and loop it and check what I need to change. Maybe I'll add a kick here. Maybe move this one around. Nice. So this has become my basic groove. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this in a folder track. It's gonna be called drums. And I like to color my drums yellow. Don't ask me why, but yeah. Okay, so this is all my drums are always yellow. So now I can minimize them and I can just like use. I feel like adding a little more things to this. So I like to approach certain snares. I like to anticipate those snares. Now I like to anticipate this second snare. So what I'll do is I'll take some sort of clap, like a big clap. Let's go to another sample pack. Let's find a trap sample. A big snare. We need some sort of big, like a long sample. By big, I mean long, right? So let's go to my samples folder and look for something interesting. Let's go to Sounds of Kashmir. Drums, claps. Let's use a church clap. Yeah, it's interesting. So what I'm gonna do now is I just added this church clap. Okay, so I'm gonna reverse this. So I have a button for that over here in Logic or in Ableton or whatever DAW you use. There's always a function for this reversing the sample. So now what this will do is it will anticipate that snare. Okay, that snare is coming, right? So where is the snare? Yeah, this is the snare. No, this is the snare. This one. So let's just hear it. It's too loud. Right. So now again, I'll just select this and put this on every bar. And now I just feel like this just missing one element, which is towards here. Some sort of element over here. So let's find an interesting sound. Your drums are gonna sound very interesting if you use non-drum sounds, right? If you use a typical kick-hat snare for everything, it's not gonna sound like a kick-hat snare. You need to find something interesting. So there's a lot of sample packs which make like weird ear candy stuff, right? So this is like a 10-inch skillet sound, right? This is a 12-inch skillet. So this is like a note basically, also like a desk hit. Frying pan. Let's use a frying pan because we can. So I'm going to add that frying pan here. run it now. So now let's just check if it's in key.
Yeah.
Just try moving it around.
Yeah.
This feels better.
Yeah.
I moved it one semitone up. So dun, dun, dun. It's like a third right now. So thirds are good. We like thirds. So yeah. So finally our groove is ready. It's too loud. Maybe I'll just reverb it a little. I like to use Valhalla Room. So one more really cool thing I'd like to show you right now. There's this website called Tuneform, right? So I'll just share the screen over here. So what it does is you go to Tuneform and you just put your BPM here, right? So my BPM is 82 BPM, right? 82. So my quarter note is 732 milliseconds. My eighth note is 366 milliseconds.
Bhushan, we can't see the screen, like the website.
Oh yeah, you can't see
Yeah,
the website.
yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let me just add that screen in this.
Yeah.
Share Google Chrome.
Yes, it's there.
Yeah. So you can see it?
No.
Not
now
anymore?
we cannot. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Now can you?
Yeah.
Good. So this is that website called Tuneform, right? So you go to you convert BPM to milliseconds. So I just typed in 82 here, and it shows me the values of your, your quarter notes, 8-note triplet, 16 notes, 30-second notes, and so on and so forth. So I like to time my reverbs a lot because it sits so well with your production when you time your reverbs. So now my quarter note is 732 milliseconds. Well, let's go back to Reaper. No, hold on. Where's Reaper? Yeah. Can you see Reaper now?
We can see just the Valhalla.
Okay, hold on. Screen. Can you see it now?
Not yet.
No?
Yeah, it's there.
Better? Right. So now my quarter note was 732 milliseconds, right? So I will go here in my Valhalla room, type in 732 ms here, 732. Oh, shit. So, 7. That's fine. An approximate number is always good. So let's just hear it. Now I can turn up the mix. Right, so it just sits so perfectly. Now I don't like the low frequencies in this, so I'm just gonna EQ it out a little bit. It's a little too boxy for me. See all of these weird frequencies. I'll just get rid of those. So you can make your elements sit in it nicely, right? So okay, we are done with the drums for this bit, right? So see, the benefit of focusing on just 4 bars makes you commit to ideas, right? So it makes you, you finalize things. Now I'm happy with this groove. If I worked on a groove for an entire chorus, then maybe like I wouldn't be happy so easily, right? So I'll just paste that for the second rep as well. And let's just hear it, what we've done.
अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमिया.
Now हम दोनों के दरमिया. I'd like to add a break over there.
दरमिया. हम दोनों के दरमिया.
And then I just mute these elements. So get rid of my hat. Yeah. So, and this thing can also repeat till the end.
तो जीना या
Just to repeat and I need to paste it properly.
तो जीना या हो अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमिया तुझको जो पाया.
Right, so I think we're done with the drums for the chorus. Now let's move to the second pillar of our our arrangement. So that will be the chords or the harmony elements. So see, I'm primarily a guitar player, so instead of explaining all of that on keyboards, I'll just explain to you on guitar. Let me know, guys, if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's audible.
So now what I'm gonna do is just quickly tune up the guitar. So now I'm thinking that, okay, I've committed to the idea that this is going to be like some sort of a lo-fi sort of an arrangement, right? So I'm thinking like a little, chords can be a little out there, not just simple 4-chord type situation. So I'll just show you the options that you can have when you are arranging a song with terms when it comes to chords. So a chord, see, the listener always listens to, like, say, an average like layman will always listen to the melody, and melody is king, which is out of the way for now, because we have it and it's been committed to. That is the final melody, that writing process of the song has been done. So we don't need to bother about that, right? What happens is, like, when you're writing a song as a singer songwriter, or even when you're collaborating with someone, you spend a lot of time, writing the melody and making it like a very catchy or like a hooky or like any kind of melody that you can wish for. But in our situation, the best part is that it's been committed to. It's already done. You don't have to bother about it at all, and you can't change it. So even better, right? So what we can do is we can experiment with the chords for this. So now, let me know if I'm loud enough. Okay. So there are many ways to approach like a melody, right? Now, this song is in A major, right? So if you had to go like a very simple route, let me just. So in the key of A, there are a bunch of chords. Like, you can have, diatonically speaking, you can have A, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E7, F sharp minor, A flat minor 7 flat 5, and so on and so forth, right? So if we stick to it diatonically, we can come up with something very simple. So I'll just play over it. Let's see what we come up with. So this is the sort of jamming that you need to do to figure out certain aspects of an arrangement.
दिल की दुआ हूँ हाँ तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमिया तुझको जो पाया.
This is a very simple way of approaching this song. Like, I'm just using 3 chords, like the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. So I'm doing. So now, I mean, this works, right? It's not bad, but we can make it a little more interesting. So see, now in our arrangement, the chorus, that line repeats.
Bhushan,
Yeah.
your mic input and guitar input went low suddenly, so it dropped basically.
Is it back?
It's still low, and even your voice levels also dropped.
Okay, everything seems fine here on my end. I didn't change any inputs or anything. Let me just check my audio device. I think it's fine. Is it my internet? No, it's not my internet.
तुझको जो पाया
Is it back? Is it okay?
Back levels are the same, but your voice and the guitar have dropped.
Okay.
Now it's there.
Now it's done. Now it's done.
Oh, I just went far from the mic. Sorry. Better?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So a very simple way of approaching the chords would be like some sort of a diatonic 3-chord sort of way. But let's do something interesting, as I said. So this thing repeats forever and ever, right? It comes forever and ever. So let's just isolate what we are gonna do. So again, markers to the rescue. Now, just copy this. Call this repeat 1. Right, so
तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया
this is repeat 2.
जी लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमियाँ
And this is repeat 3. It's the same thing, the same exact same melody. So what we can do is we can have 3 different things here. So now this third part is, let's just call it B for a lack of a better, So now what I'm gonna do is, I know that this thing repeats thrice, and this whole thing repeats again, right?
तो जीना आया अब ये
So this is basically repeat 4. It goes back to B, and
अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमियाँ
basically it's just like a repetition of 1 and 2. So let's just try to do something interesting here, right? So now, as we said in the first idea that we did was like simple diatonic, like A major, E major, D major. So maybe this will work for the first chord. So let's just track that in. So I'm just gonna make a quick track. I'm gonna get my drums minimized. I'm gonna put this in a bus.
You're not audible, Bhushan.
It's your levels are very low
Just
again.
hold on. I'll just crank up the gain on my mic. Better?
Yeah. Now it's
Yeah.
better.
Much better. Yeah. So yeah. So what I've done is I have made a bus for the drums and I've put it away for now. And then I isolated the repetitions for all of these. So ignore the numbers right now. It's just a little jumbled, but like we'll get to that later. So let's focus on, again, the first 4 bars, repeat 1 and 2. So I made a track. It's just a guitar track. I selected the inputs, my gain is set, and I'll just press record. And then just jam along with the idea. Let's.
दिल की दुआ हूँ हाँ तुझको जो पाया तो तुझको जो
Do one more. Okay.
दिल की दुआ हूँ हाँ तुझको जो पाया तो तुझको
Take one more.
दिल की दुआ हूँ हाँ तुझको जो पाया तो तुझको जो.
So what I'm thinking now is that I need to, find a comp which works better with this pattern. So let's just play this with the drums to come up with something interesting. Something like this will work, right? So let's try again.
दिल की दुआ हूँ हाँ तुझको जो पाया तो.
So let's just double track this. So I duplicated the track. Panned one left, panned one right. Made a folder out of those. Let's call this guitar 1. Guys, let me know if you can hear anything, okay? I'm still in the middle of figuring this out. So yeah, this is the first part. So this is repeat 1. This is double
दिल
track.
की दुआ हूँ हाँ तुझको जो पाया तो
I messed up the first chord.
दिल की दुआ हूँ हाँ तुझको दिल की दुआ हूँ हाँ तुझको तुझको.
So yeah, we've got repeat 1 for now, right? So again, focusing on small sections, focusing on small wins, it just keeps you going. So now this is something that will repeat again probably. So this thing basically is a repetition of this entire thing, right? So let's just paste this in repeat 1. Right now, let's work on repeat 2. So now I want to do something interesting now. So I was doing. Let's go out of the diatonic sort of vibe. By diatonic, I mean like all the notes are in the key of the song, in the scale of the song, the major scale, because this song is in a major scale. There is no outside notes, but in the harmony we can do that. So maybe on the second repetition, I'll just play from the first repetition. Something like this. Let's just try it out off the top of my head, sounding fine. Let's see. Sounds interesting. So let's just. So this is repeat 2. Yeah. So I've got this in place. Sorry guys, there's a lot of latency in what I'm trying to do. So because of that, I'm just trying to be as precise as I can. So now we have repeat 1, repeat 2, and we have the B part. So now I'd like to open up here, right? So I'd like to. Sounds interesting. Let's see. अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमिया तुझको. I don't know why there's so much latency. अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमिया तुझको. Sounds interesting. I think these Valhalla rooms are adding to the latency. तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया. It's getting tracked late. That's the issue. So we'll just move this on time, on grid. तुझको जो पाया. Fine. Because of the latency, I have to time correct all of this. अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमिया तुझको जो पाया. Then we paste repeat 2 over here, which was this. Cut. We pick this up and we paste this here. So the benefit of isolating sections like this is very important, because like when you're focusing on like really small sections without really worrying about the bigger picture, it keeps you motivated. It keeps you going, you know.
So we have a question, Bhushan.
Yeah, tell me.
It's Jaideep asking, what chord progression are you using for the repeat 2 and the B section?
Okay, so first I'll just break it down for you. The first repeat is, I'll just write it down. Hold on. So I like to do this a lot even when I'm doing guitar sessions. So repeat 2, I'll write. So this basically the root is basically A major 7th, E dominant 7th, and then D major 7th. So the A, E, then when it goes to the E major, E7, the second repeat starts with the E minor 7. So the second repeat is an E minor 7 going to an A7, and then it goes to like a D major 7, and then the D major 7 becomes a D minor 6. Now what this essentially is a 2-5-1 in D, because I need to resolve it to D at this part. So this bit. So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to change the center where it feels like home, right? Your root always feels like home, and your 4 chord always feels like home too. It's like your second home. It's like a parent's home maybe. So what I'm trying to do is I'm staying in the key of A, and then I'm implying that even D is like a safe place to be. So to resolve to a D, I need to do the 2-5-1 in D. So the 2 chord of a D is an E minor, the 5 chord of a D is A major, and the 1 chord of D is D, right? So and then I'm doing like a D minor 6, which is basically a 4 minor chord of A. So we are going back to A. So to come back to the root, we need to, we need like a gateway. It's like there are roads, right? You always find your way towards a certain key center. So that is that, and then it goes to the B section, which is right. So now this section is it starts from the B minor, C sharp minor, D, and D minor again to go back to the A, because see, this sounds so good. Like when you go to a D major, D minor, A. It's such a nice resolution, and even he's repeating that again, so it feels like home. So the B minor, the C sharp minor, D major, D minor 6, and goes back to the A major. So the 2 chord, the 3 chord, the 4 chord, the 4 minor 6 chord, and the 1 chord. If you're into naming the chords, I'll just quickly explain to you what is what. Like say your root is A, and if you start from A, so your A is 1, B is 2, so on and so forth. Your C sharp is 3, your D is 4, your E is 5. So if you take those chords and take those notes and those note values, those numbers, and make chords out of it, that's when you come up with the diatonic scale. And that's like it needs like another workshop, but it's a thing in itself. But like as a producer, you need to, it's like a prerequisite to know some chords at least, so that you can come up with something interesting. Now, I'm not saying that you need to know all chords and you need to know like super interesting chords to make something interesting. Do what comes naturally to you. Do what comes, do what feels great. So yeah, so we settled on this, and this is our chorus, right? So I'd like to add some layers to this. So I like this repeat too, right? So I just duplicated this, deleted these tracks, and now I'm gonna do something. So I'm gonna add, so I'm doing. Let's add this line on top.
तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया अब ये लम्हा तो जीना आया
So I just added that.
अब ये
So this thing needs to be here. The 4 minor chord needs to be here.
अब ये लम्हा
Let's just retract that. I'm gonna paste this here.
तो जीना आया अब ये लम्हा था तो जीना आया अब ये लम्हा तो जीना आया तो जीना आया
Just hold on.
तो जीना आया अब ये लम्हा था
Right, so I've made a double track of that. Now this sounds a little interesting to me than what it was before. What about you guys?
Yeah, so the
Let's-
layering magic. Can you just elaborate a bit about that thought of layering and stuff? So
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So
Yeah.
what happens is like now I'm thinking of layers as a guitar player because I know I need to show off that change, because when something interesting happens, the more see, as a general listener, you're not going to expect that E minor chord over there, like, because it's not super obvious over there, right? So maybe you can reinforce it a little bit, maybe force down that thought someone's throat, then it makes more sense. So what I'm doing right now here is, if you can see my guitar, so the E minor chord is this, right? So this is the third. So I'm just playing the third. So all chords that I've played in that section, I'm just playing thirds and I'm playing the octaves. So now, right now, it's not processed at all. There's no reverb, there's no delay, because there's a lot of latency. So I'm not tracking with it. But in this genre, especially, there's a lot of guitar work that happens, which is in this realm. So now again, I'm gonna paste this in repeat 2, where we did that. Again, I can't stress enough the importance of chunking. I can't explain to you how important it is to tackle 4 bars at a time, and you'll always end up with like a very simple but a very effective arrangement. So now we are almost done with the chorus here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a bus for the guitars. Let's call this guitars. Let's put in some RC20 on it. RC20 is like this multi-effect plugin, which you can, add lo-fi character to things. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the filters. I'm going to get rid of some of the low end, some of the high end, increase the stereo width a little bit. So this is like an all-inclusive plugin, right? Everything is there. Let's add some wobble. See, it suddenly sounds lo-fi. Let's do. Let's just distort it with like the crunch setting, so it adds a little high end. Nice. And let's add reverb. Now this part, it's too twangy for my taste for lo-fi. So I'm just gonna filter it. So let's just open an EQ over here. So this is the guitar 2. I'm supposed to label this, sorry. So this is guitar 2. Let's open like say a SSL style EQ. What I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna get rid of the high end. So this is basically a low pass filter. So I'm gonna hear it and I'm gonna dial in the low pass filter. Got a lot of high end. Let's just dial it in, say till 8K. Even more. So even I crank down the high end from this high shelf as well, right? And let's add some delay to this. So I like to use repeater for delay, another delay plugin. So I like to set the mix somewhere around like 25%. Let's do a sort of a bucket brigade type delay. A bucket brigade is basically a circuit that used to be in the old bucket brigade style. It's a name of a circuit basically. So there's a lot of pedals which follow that circuit. Interesting. Now let's hear it in context. I think I need to dial down the delay a little bit. Let's add some width to this. So let's just put another instance of RC20 to this and crank up the width knob. So it's gonna push the signal further in your ears so that it doesn't come in the way of the vocals, because vocals are dead center, right? If you're playing something which is in the similar frequency range, it's gonna fight with it. So talking about frequency ranges, I'll come to the spectrum analyzer in a bit. But in this process, what I'm trying to do is getting the basic premise behind this is getting the lead lines out of the way of the vocals. So let's even add some stereo reverb to this. To turn down the delay a little bit. So now my chords are done. Let's color this green because all my guitars are green. I don't ask me why. They're green. So turn this green and this green. Yeah. So now let's move to the second most important, or rather the most important thing in an arrangement is the bass. So I'm just gonna quickly grab my bass guitar.
Just a quick question, Bhushan,
Yeah,
regarding this. So like, as you said, eating up the spectrum, and you are like checking out the spectrum and the width and overall frequency range when you are arranging. So how important part that does it play during the mix, like, because
it's
you're
very
doing
important.
because you're doing it like all that what we could say the frequency management part or at your production stage itself. That will be like a very handy thing at the mix stage, because you don't have to fiddle and play around and fight with the frequencies at that part when your production is locked.
So I'd like to elaborate on this a little more. See, generally when I produce my music, generally, like if a client comes to me, like say a singer-songwriter, like an indie singer-songwriter or whatever, I am the person who's mixing and mastering the record also, right? So I like to think of it from the beginning only. So it starts from, you remember I talked about how your percussion needs to be in key of the song, right? So basically what happens is if you don't put it in key, it's gonna occupy some weird frequency, and then you are either gonna mute it in the mix stage or you're gonna turn it so low that it's not gonna make any difference. So the most important thing is now when we'll track bass, we'll look at these things, that why this is so important. So now I'm just gonna turn off my pedal board and start the line input, the instrument, the high Z input, because I'm tracking DI bass. Can you hear the bass?
It was audible. Yeah.
Just hold on. So just made a new track. So I have all these templates ready in my session with this is gonna have latency. Anyway, so now we'll just see our frequency spectrum, right? So now let's start with the drums. So let's go to the drums. Just play. Now this is a free plugin called Voxengo Span, right? So this is one of my all-time favorite plugins. I can't live without this. So we're playing the drums right now. If you see the balance, my kick lives here, somewhere around the 70 to 80 to 100 sort of range. My clap lives somewhere around 1K, 300 to 1K range. And all my hats live somewhere around the 6K, 8K range, right? So there's this nice pocket for me to play bass in, right? And my vocals are somewhere over here in the 1K sort of range. What happens is now when you put in your elements, now when I put in the guitars, I'm going to solo the guitars as well. And now see what area it occupies. See, it occupies this area. It exactly occupies, it stays in such a way that it is always out of the way of anything else, right? So if I played it on a higher octave or like super high plinky chords, it would have messed with my vocals, right? It would have messed with some other element, right? So because of that, when you program when you play something in, you should always keep an eye out on this. And now this tells me that my guitars are super loud. Bumping here, so I know that it's super loud, so I'm just gonna turn it down a hair. Beautiful. Now we'll just turn on the vocals and solo the vocals and see where they sit. The vocals sit just above the guitars. This area. Now this is the low mids, which I'll cut later, but see, this is the most decipherable area of the vocals. So in my arrangement, if you turn off the vocals, you'll see there's a nice pocket. See, you can see some empty space here, and that's where the vocal fits in. So see, your frequency spectrum is pretty flat. And that is a very important thing for a good arrangement. If you overcrowd your arrangement, if you add too many layers, your low mids are gonna get very crummy and very busy. And the mix engineer is gonna put low cuts left, right, center on every element that there is, and you're gonna lose all warmth, and you're gonna lose all sorts of all the beauty in the full range of samples is gonna be lost. What happens is when you use samples or when you use any instrument, people say it's big sounding. What do you mean by it's big sounding? Big sounding is the fact that it is occupying a lot of space in the EQ, like in your spectrum. Now my drums here are big sounding because they're occupying a lot of space. See, like they are occupying every possible frequency. So they are big, they will sound big, even if you hear it on headphones or if you hear it on like some really small speaker or some really bad speaker or like a mono speaker or whatever, or in the gym or in the mall or anything, it's gonna sound big because it's occupying a lot of space. Whereas if you see the guitars, they will occupy space, but I'm gonna EQ them. So, yeah. So they are not occupying a lot of lows, they're not occupying a lot of highs, and it's pretty weak in this range because there's vocals here. So generally in the mix stage, what I will do is I'll just put an EQ. I'll get rid of this area a little bit to make space for the bass at this area, which is my bass area. Now this is a very harsh cut, which is not necessary, but for demonstration, I'm going to do that for now. Just keep it there for now. Now let's do bass finally.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Like you're right now recording the bass guitar, will you add a sub underneath, or just the bass guitar will be the low end?
In lo-fi music, generally the lowest element is the bass, and maybe you'll have to take a call between what's gonna be the lowest, either the kick or the bass. But I like to keep the bass as the lowest element. But I'm putting live bass right now, so I'm not programming. I'm not doing any 808s, or I'm not adding like a sub in Serum or like any synth. So we'll just play it, and then maybe we'll take a call. Okay, what is more important? What sounds good? So
Got it.
and generally speaking, the subs, if you have a good, decent enough bass guitar, now this is not like the best bass in the world, but it's like a decent enough bass. So you're gonna get some sort of low end from it. Like by low end, I mean sub lows, like something below 50 hertz or 60 hertz, something below the kick, right? So that's gonna be there. So you don't really need to add a sub. But in case you're doing 808s, or if you're programming some sort of synth, basically like a synth bass, like a Moog or something, you will get that subs in it, and you will have to work around that. But right now in our situation, we are trying to do something mellow and not something like super hard hitting, or like it shouldn't be very muddy. So let's just try and play this bit. So
थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमियां.
I forgot my chords, but yeah, let's focus on repeat one, right? So let's make another track. Let's call this bass. Now let's just turn off the vocals and see what comp we can come up with. So let's do something like this. Let's just try it. I'll just track this. This is there. Now let's go to the repeat 2. So now this is E minor, A. So now I like to show that I like to play a line. Something like this. Now what am I doing? My E minor is this chord. So I'll play the third. So 1, 2, 3. So I'll do. So I'm doing E minor, A major, D major. So I'm hitting the roots and the thirds. On the first chord, I'm hitting the third. Right? So. I'm just playing the thirds in the bass line. That would be something interesting. So this is the line that I came up with. Just put it in our bass track, fade it in so that there's no clicks and pops. Let's just hear that with the drums. Let's see if it feels good. It should feel good. Drums and bass should feel good. That's what I like about drums and bass. So let's see. Yeah, I rushed a little bit over here. So I'll just cut that waveform, maybe move it a little bit on the right so that it's a little late. And then and then we go to the next part. I'm just following the chords, guys. I'm not doing something atrangi here. So I'm gonna add a nice line over here because it hits that D minor chord, right? So I can go. So something like this. Let's try it out. And then it goes back to the repeat 1 as our markers. Again, I'm stressing on dividing your song in sections because I can go part by part and not be confused about it. If I was just producing like as a big thing, I would have been confused. Hey, I would like to repeat that here. I'd like to repeat that there. Stuff like that. Taking those calls early on makes it very interesting. Change the kick in those sections, right? Where this so I'm just gonna do a 4 on the floor here. So because then it will be interesting because I'll show movement over there, right? So I'm gonna mute everything that's coming in the way of the bass. So let's take the reverse that we did, reverse clap that we did, and let's put it just before the bass fill starts. Let's get rid of this snare as well. So now even the vocals is doing a fill here, right? Something like this. So I'm gonna add like a gap over here. So this thing. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of all the stuff here. Let's add this, change this thing, this reverse clap to. I just want to focus on that. So I muted everything else. The bass also. Now all these transitions, they sound very weird right now, but we'll fix them. Repeat 1 and paste that here. So let's pick up our bass as well. Let's see if it's working. Now we are done with the guitars, the harmony elements, the bass, the drums. Now let's just work on the effects. So I'm just gonna unplug the bass right now. Now, when we began the session, we started talking about like the important pillars of an arrangement. We are done with most of them for the chorus, like not for the verses and everything, right? So let's focus on the very important, most overlooked pillar is the SFX. Now, all modern arrangements, they sound good just because of SFX. Like all the stuff that there is otherwise, it's so normal and average that the SFX makes it shine, even if it's like very super normal and nothing fancy is happening. We did a bunch of fancy stuff in the middle here where the repeat 2 happens and all of those things happen, but we can accentuate those with effects. Now, what are effects? Effects are sound effects, basically, right? So now I'd like to have some effects at certain places, which there's like a personal inclination for me. Like I like to have effects on the start of the beat, at some certain the 2s and the 4s of the snare, which we've already done. It's a sort of an effects, but I call it's a part of the drums right now, but like let me get to that. So let's just open a new bus and start looking at effects. So there's this sound that I always use a lot. It's in this ear candy folder. Is it here? No, it's pop box. Yeah. So this sound, I have used this in all of the songs that I've produced ever, and that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get what I mean. Yeah, so I like to put this at the start of my drums, right? So let's mute the vocals again and check it out how it sounds. Yeah, so we do this. This bit, like in the bit, we'll put this. So what I'm trying to do is I'm defining the sections by this symbol swell, right? So the listener is anticipating something. Okay, kuch to interesting hoga idhar, something like that. Now let's just add some sort of vocal chops, right? Let's just see if we have something interesting. Let's go to my vocal chop stash. Got a bunch of loops, or let's just go to splice. I don't think you'll be able to see splice here, so let's stick to something which is. Hold on, let me find the vocal sample.
I've tried.
So this is what I found. I'm sure you won't be able to hear it, but just hold on. Okay. So this is what I thought might work. So it's obviously some other key and it's some other tempo. So it's A minor, right? We need to take it to, our key is A major, right? So the relative minor of that is F sharp minor. So let's just tune it down. Over here. So let's just hear it. I'm just gonna EQ it a little bit. I don't like the low frequencies that it has. all this mud, and I'm gonna layer it with a copy of the same thing but pitched an octave higher. So what I'm doing is in Reaper, I've set up this thing where I can jump octaves. If I click here, it's gonna be this. And this is too high, so I'm just gonna put like a low pass filter. Nice. So let's do this with our arrangement. Gonna do is I'm gonna sidechain this to the kick. So whenever section repeat A comes, I'm gonna repeat this, right? So as you can see, repeat one. So I'm just gonna go to that, and it was repeat one over here. So I just pasted that. Cut it here. Needs to have some sort of transition again. So I'll show you how I sidechain. I just this vocal chop thing. Let's color this pink because vocals are always pink. So I use this plugin called Duck. So what it does is it takes the sidechain input from another track that you have into your needs sidechaining, right? So I take my output from the kick. This is my kick, right? I route it to the vocal chop thingy. I change the input, the receive track to 3 and 4 and no MIDI. And now the kick is feeding into this folder of the vocal chop, and this plugin is gonna accept that from the sidechain input, right? So now you'll be able to hear the effect it has. So I just changed the curve of the response it's gonna have. So it's gonna duck really come up. So if I do this, make this into 100%, it's gonna completely mute itself when the kick plays. Right. So not a big fan of the 100% setting. Let's do somewhere around 85. And now let's listen with the sidechain. Let's try and paste this in the B section. Let's see if it works. So now let's just slowly blend it in. So what I've done is I just made an idea and now I'm going to chop it around and see what works. So let's just try it with the vocals. So it's all trial and error. Just try your idea that comes to your head. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, you can always can it. But you're still in the process of having a flow. You'll never really, if you execute your ideas really fast, you'll never run out of ideas because they just keep coming if there's momentum to those. So now I like this idea. So I see a gap over here. So I'll just paste this here instead. Maybe move it a little.
बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमियाँ तुझको जो पाया
Now let's do something interesting. Now this that ad lib that he has done, I'm just gonna duplicate it and pitch it up 1 octave. So it's gonna sound very funny like a chipmunk. Then I'm gonna drown it in reverb. Let's call this Valhalla Room. Long reverb. Let's make one more and pitch it down. So it's gonna sound like a. Let's pan this a little bit. So the high one goes to a little to the left, the low one goes a little to the right. And then it's gonna accentuate that break that we just made. So let's just volume, we'll fix. This guitar too needs to go down a little bit. Now let's take this idea and put it in the chorus here. Right, so that was that. Now just let's look for more effects elements. Let's look for risers, let's look for boomers, let's look for, you know, some ear candy stuff which makes the listener go, you know, it intrigues the listener a little bit. So let's see, let's go to effects elements, sweep up and lasers. Let's see if a laser sound work. Too intense. Too intense. I think this might work. So again, it sounds really funny out of context, but so let's go to that gap where we created that thing where we cut down everything. Oh, that gap, and there's another gap here. So now this is in key. I just pitched it up 1 semitone. Let's put this down. Again, let's drown this in reverb so it stays out of the way. And reverb is the sound of lo-fi. So all these decisions that you take need to have some sort of like a common goal. Now let's add some sort of sweep up. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. So let's add the sweep up here. And I'm gonna turn it down because it's gonna be super loud. Samples are really loud, so you need to turn them down every time you input. You need to have the effects swell also here. Now remember to watch your spectrum from time to time. Now when you see the see, it's quite balanced. The bass seems like it's loud. That's okay, we can always turn it up. Let's go to our bass, which was here.
जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमियाँ तुझको जो पाया तुझको दरमिया तुझको दरमिया तुझको दरमिया तुझको जो पाए.
So yeah, so let's add those sweep ups wherever we need them. Like, so this section was empty, right?
जीना अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों.
Let's do that 4 on the floor situation here again, which was this, just pasting our kicks. Need them to be.
लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमिया तुझको जो पाया.
Let's add our percussion thingy here. Sounds good. So guys, I have a question. So do you want me to produce the verses also, or do you want me to talk about the mix of this section? What do you think would be a good idea? Because I think we are running short on time.
So the mix.
The mix, for sure. Okay.
No.
Cool. So in the mix process, I like to approach things bus by bus. So see, you must have seen I've routed everything already with the as I started producing, I always made buses. In Logic, you have to assign them to like a bus, and then you have to create those buses. In Reaper, I just make a folder and it's by default a bus, which is easy for me to navigate the session also, and which is easy for the routing as well. So now if you see, the dummy box is in one bus. So as I said, there's some makeshift stuff on top of this, right? So let's keep it that way. Now if you see the drums, there's nothing. I have not processed the drums at all. They are just samples. Maybe I just put an EQ on that frying pan sound, but that's about it. I haven't processed that at all. The guitar also, I just EQ'd it a little bit and put some reverb. Even the bass is a little, oh shit, what happened to my internet? I think it's back. Yeah. So then later, there's nothing on the bass as of now. There's something from my preset, but we'll get to that later. And the FX elements are just the way they are. So they are just samples, right? So now let's start with the mix procedure. So I like to keep looking at the spectrum analyzer. Now this spectrum analyzer lives on my other screen, which is on my left. So I just keep referring to that slowly, and whenever I point something out, I'm gonna show that to you. Okay. So as I said, I showed you the drums soloed, right? I like how it's sitting, but I think it can use a little more grit and a little more lo-fi-ness, if that's a word, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some tape saturation on this, on the entire bus. I use virtual tape machines. So if you listen very carefully, it adds like 1 or 2 dB to the low end. With it, without it, so it creates this thick sort of a sound. It's very subtle. I think, I'm not sure if you're being able to hear it on Zoom, but yeah, so then that's all sorted. Maybe I need to crank up the claps. These are my hi-hats. So these are my claps. I think these are my open hats. Rename your files, which I haven't done. This is my rim. Yeah. So I think I need to crank this. Let me just see if I can boost it in the EQ. Like where it's sitting, but maybe it could use like these 200 walla frequency a little more. So let's just listen. Again, let's just go back to our spectrum. See, now this area is being filled up a little better because of that boost. Let's boost it a little more. Much better, yeah. Now, my hi-hats sound very sterile right now. So let's just make a bus for the hats. And let's just solo it and listen. So I like to do this thing a lot. It's more of a production thing only, but I should have done this before. But what I do is whenever I'm doing some sort of electronic or like programmed sort of music, I put a transient designer on hats and I get rid of all the sustain and the pump. So this is like a kilohertz plugin. So just listen to without it and with it maxed out. So it becomes very clicky. It becomes very small and short and like, very, it sounds a little artificial, which is what I like about it. So if I increase the attack a little bit, without it, it's still bleeding. With it, it becomes tighter, which I like. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. It's not working on the open hat for sure. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to put the transient shaper directly on the hat, the closed hat solo track, and get rid of this bus again. So now this is what we are left with. I'll also like some saturation in it. So if you see again in our spectrum, this area can have some. So let's just use, there are a bunch of saturators. Let's use RC20 again because it's got everything and it's the easiest. Everyone has it. Widen it up. Always level pitch. So when you're mixing, like, see, it's becoming way louder. So you were going to perceive it as, oh wow, this is doing something cool, but it's not. It's just making it louder. With it, without it, with it. So it's not working. Let's try a different preset. Ion, tube pair. Maybe this will work. Yeah, it's making it a little thicker. I like that. So drums, and let's mix our drums and bass now. Go back to your spectrum. The bass is kind of grabbing this area, but it's probably messing with the kick a little bit. So let's just solo the kick and the bass. If you put an EQ on the kick, let's put a slate EQ. So let's see. So your kick has a lot of stuff going on in this area, right? Which is making it tubby, which I like. So I'm not going to cut it. I'm going to cut the bass at somewhere around 50 Hertz. So let's go to the bass. And guys, I'm listening also. I'm not just, looking at the frequencies and I'm cutting. Generally speaking, like when I started producing and mixing, I didn't really have good monitoring or good headphones or whatever, right? So because of that, I had to resort to, mixing with my eyes a little bit, which works, but it can sometimes get you in a very strange situation because like it just some things that look fine, but sound horrible, and the other way around. Some things look horrible, like, hey, this shouldn't work in theory, but they sound great. So always like take this with a pinch of salt, all of these things. But when you have no option, or when you are mixing on like a cheap set of headphones, like for example, these are like Audio Technicals. These are like fairly inexpensive. So if you're working off of those, then having some visual aid is always, welcome. So at this frequency, see this thing, maybe I'll cut a little bit. And the super lows. Yeah. Let's even saturate our bass a little bit to add those extra harmonics. Let's use RC20 again because everyone has it. Let's go to crunch. Let's distort it. It's adding a tubbiness to it. So turning up the volume. Go back to your spectrum analyzer. See if everything is balanced. Yeah, see, there's a nice pocket over here for everything else. So with your drums and bass, you need to create that pocket. And even when you are not mixing it, you are producing it, you need to do this so that the mix engineer gets a fair idea of what you're trying to do. Because like generally speaking, when your production is so sorted that the mixing engineer just has to, import the tracks and just, use his ears as a second opinion. And not change a lot of things. That's, I think, the most ideal situation. So as a producer, you have to be at some level a mix engineer as well, right? So now let's just introduce the guitars.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, like, won't you do like volume ducking on the bass like you did with the vocal chops?
So it depends. In this genre, again, as I said, when we started producing this, we decided that this is going to be like a lo-fi sort of an arrangement, right? So when it comes to lo-fi, I like how tubby the bass is, and I like how fat the kick is, and I like both of them together. And I've played it not exactly on top of each other. Like just say in a rock band, the kick and bass like just follows each other like crazy, right? There are some moments where that happens, and there are some moments it's just free, like a fill, or like there are certain parts like that. So I think when you go deeper into a genre, like you understand that there are certain things which are done for that genre, like they are very specific to that genre. Now say if you're listening to some sort of dubstep or some sort of like house music or some sort of something which is like a 4 on the floor sort of like dick sort of vibe, I think that's when they like to sidechain the bass, in this situation, whereas we are playing a nice groove, so there is a nice interplay between the bass and the kick. So if I sidechain the bass, that interplay will be affected. So it's a purely musical decision. It's not a mixed decision at all. Like it's mainly like a production decision. So why did I do the vocal chop thing? Is because I just wanted to keep it out of the way of the main vocals also, and it's kind of an interesting effect which creates a bed sort of a scene under the other elements. So that is why I did it. But it's not necessary that you always have to sidechain the bass. What I did was, on the other hand, I put an EQ and I cut down a little bit of those frequencies so it stays out of the way, but it's not going to be completely muted. You can dial in your compression, like when you're doing sidechain compression, you can dial it in a certain way. But even a better solution for that is maybe using like a multi-band EQ. So say Pro MB from FabFilter, if you have that. So I know that the bass is hitting at somewhere around the 50 range, right? So I'm just gonna put that and you hear it with the kick. So in case you just have to sidechain it, then this is the way you can do it. So it stays nicely out of the way of the kick. I'll just mute the vocals so that we can focus on the other things. I think the guitars need more width, like they are right, like they're still panned, but I think they are pretty small sounding. Like by small, I mean they're very narrow sounding. So I think they need some sort of width. They need more spread. They need more size. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull up this channel strip called the AMEC 9099. I'm not gonna use anything from this. I'm just going to use the stereo width button, as simple as that. So let's just listen to it without it, with it. So you just spread a little more, and maybe you can add some sheen. Maybe not. Maybe I can just like add a hint of compression on guitar so that it's all even, because it's just popping out when that line comes in. Bah, 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 it's just like, oh, suddenly, oh wow. So you just need to, control it a little bit. So let's find a nice bus compressor. Let's use the Slate FG Gray. Just gonna control it nicely without it, changing it drastically. Crank up the threshold. I don't think this plugin has enough headroom. Let's go to Pro C2. So I'm looking for somewhere around 2 dB of gain reduction. It's just controlling it. But I'm gonna put this before the retro color, because the reverb is getting compressed and it's popping out, right? So before it hits the wobble and the distortion, I'm gonna put the Pro C2 here. So now it's gonna have sound control. Now it's sitting nicely for me. So now if you see, there's a nice pocket for the vocals. Everything is sounding tight, right? So now just get our vocals in. Now let's talk about vocal mixing for a second. So this is my friend Sunit, who sang these parts, and we recorded this on a warm audio JFET mic. So basically this thing is pretty inconsistent because he just went for it, and there are a bunch of parts where he's jumped in volume and stuff like that. So that's when you need to use compression. Now I'll show you my chain again. So what I've done is I've just cut down on the rumble a little bit, and there was this nasal frequency that I cut. So with the EQ, let's just go to the chorus again. So this frequency I had to cut. That nasal frequency which I didn't like, and the general low mid was making it a little muddy, right? So that I cut. Then I put some compression to control it, just for dynamics control. I'm not adding any tone to the voice with this. So there are two compressors that I've used. The first one is a VCA sort of compressor, which is very gluey. So what it does is it's just catching all the peaks. So it's got a really fast attack. So whenever the vocal goes above a certain point, it just like catches it. Whereas this second compressor is more for the butteriness of it. Like it's just controlling it in a very nice way. It's very smooth. This is like an optical compressor. So generally speaking, this is not the typical choice for compressors, at least the VCA one. People use an 1176 style compressor, which is like a FET compressor, which is very fast, right? So it just catches all the peaks really fast. But in this case, a quick and dirty mix, this is working fine for me, and the ratio is high enough, so it's not going to be very, very subtle. It's quite a lot. Like if you go to like one of those louder sections, it is doing some work. It's not doing a lot, but say this part. See on the ha, that's where he's going up, right? So it's just catching that. Doing nothing. So I'm just catching the peaks with this, and then for the tone and for the butteriness, for lack of a better word, I'm using this opto compressor, right? So after that, now comes this Mag EQ, which adds a lot of air to the picture. So Sunit's voice, I really love his voice, and I really love how it sounds on this mic. But in this sort of situation, I think it's a little dull, in this mix, or like say in this arrangement. I find it a little dull, right? I did it in like I found it dull even when recording it, but it was like, fixable because I needed that vocal delivery also. So I resorted to it being a little dull, which I can fix in the mix. So what I'm doing right now is I'm boosting somewhere around 5K, like a shelf at 5K, and I'm boosting a lot. I'm boosting like barely, like, more than 3-4 dB. Yeah, it's 4 dB here. So without it, it's
तेरी हवा में
the chorus.
अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए
With it,
अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए थम
so
जाए
this is what it's doing. I'm just exaggerating it.
अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए थम जाए बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमियाँ.
Cool. So that is my quick and dirty vocal mix. So now let's go to the master stage.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I wanted to ask that if I am going to use some cheap microphone, then what exactly would you do to enhance it, like to make it more professional?
Okay, so I'm just gonna make a new track and I'm gonna explain to you the signal chain that works, right? So say you have a cheap mic, say you have an 80-20-20, like this is like a super cheap mic. Most people have this mic. This is my first mic. I bought this a long time back and it's still working, but it's a cheap mic. It is, the highs are very tinny and the lows are not that defined and it sounds harsh. So it doesn't respond to a lot of EQ and a lot of compression very well, right? So the most important part in that is all the corrective stuff that you do, So as I showed you in the beginning, in the vocal mix that we already did, the first EQ, there is no boosting here. There's only cutting. So I'm just correcting all the things that are missing, right? So your first thing in your chain should be an EQ. So I've got a shortcut over here. So I add an EQ, right? So then I get rid of the rumble, which is somewhere around 50 to 100. So you get rid of that. Then there's a lot of low mid like muddiness in this area, somewhere around 200 to 500, depending on the vocalist. If it's a guy, then it's going to be somewhere over here. If it's a girl, it's going to be somewhere a little higher. And girls' voices are way easier to mix because like they fundamentally sit in a nicer area in the EQ. So I mean, that's a different topic altogether, but just leaving it out there. So so I basically cut this area a little bit, and you can also do it in a multi-band situation. So if you have Pro Q3, everyone has Pro Q3. So you go to Pro Q3, cut that same area somewhere around this 150 sort of area, right click and make dynamic. So what it's gonna do is, it's not gonna completely cut it, but it's gonna reduce it when it goes beyond a certain point, right? So first step is corrective EQ, right? After that comes compression. So maybe you can use like an 1176 style compressor, like this, for example. So you just catch the peaks. So you don't want to see more than 3 dB of gain reduction. You don't want to see more than that. So the attack needs to be really fast, like super fast, because we are catching the peaks so that it sounds smooth. It doesn't pop out. It doesn't hurt our ears, right? And the release also needs to be super fast. So once that is done, then you go add a tonal compressor, so which adds tone to your sound. So something like the LA2A or like a clone of an LA2A. So I really like this BX Opto plugin. This is a nice plugin. So again, you don't want to see a lot of gain reduction. I would go tops like 5 to 6 dB of gain reduction. So I mean, if the voice needs it, if you like the tone, and if it's like a super electronic sounding arrangement, then you can go for more compression. But in general, if it's like, if you want it to sound natural, if you want it to sound like a human, then it has to be somewhere around like not more than 6 dB, 6 to, I'll go not more than 8 dB to be very frank. So this is one type of optical compressor. Instead of that, maybe you can use the Opticon, which is also like a more colorful compressor. It adds a little bit of saturation to your vocals when you do this, right? So your cheap mic is gonna be very weak sounding, like it's gonna be very tinny sounding, and the low mids are gonna be weird, the mids are gonna be like super harsh, and the highs are gonna be like very tinny, right? So when you add saturation to something like that, it just fills out the gaps that your mic is missing, right? So adjust it to taste. You can use like a dedicated saturation plugin also, and once that is done, you have like a basic sort of a tone, right? Then later you can use this free plugin called hold on, yeah, Coffee Pun. It's a plugin by Acoustica Audio. So this basically emulates a Pultec EQ, right? So what you can do is whatever frequencies that are missing, like somewhere around 3K to 6K, or over the air band, like after the 10K, 12K range, you can just boost that very subtly to create the things that are missing in your mic. So again, you're correcting it with your first two EQs, then you're adding compression to it to make it even out, and then you're adding a tonal sort of a compression or like a drive or some sort of saturation to fill it out, and then you're boosting a little more things to make it even more full. Basically find the frequencies that you need and which sound good to you and boost them with this EQ, and just cut whatever you don't like. And generally speaking, all sorts of decisions that you're taking here are to be taken with a pinch of salt, because every vocal is different and every song is different. So the point is that whatever you do, it's going to be different for every situation, but you need to have intent. You need to have a reason why you're doing it. You because I told you ki cut 60K 60 hertz on a kick, so like boost 60 hertz on a kick, so you shouldn't do it blindly. Like you should take into consideration what your song needs. Now coming back to our song, so if you see the spectrum analyzer, I'm pretty happy with this. It's nice and flat. Every frequency is being covered. I think these vocal chops can go a little up. These can go a little down. So we need that sweep up here, which is missing. Yeah, so something like that. So I'm kind of happy with this. I would technically add a little more layers, but I think we are like way over our deadline. So let's just do a quick and dirty master. So let's open my mixer. So yeah. Can you see my mixer, guys?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
You can, right? So let's just go here, and so you can see all my tracks here. I'm just gonna do a quick and dirty master. So with the master, like what I'm trying to do is when my client is hearing this on a phone or on a laptop or in the car or something, I just want to make it nice enough for him to, for all the elements to translate well, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a sort of a mid-side EQ. This is my first thing. Again, with EQing is always corrective, compression, and then you do the additive EQ. That's something that I believe in. Like when you're EQing something, you cut first, then you maybe compress it if it's needed, and then you boost the frequency. So why am I doing this is because the compressed frequencies, if you're boosting something, then the compressor is going to react to it a little more than more than it's intended to. Like say if you are boosting the low end in something, the compressor is going to get triggered by the low end more than the high end, so which is not what we want in most situations. Sometimes you need it, but like in most situations, this workflow always works. So let's open Infinity EQ. Yeah. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put a low cut and take this to side. So the side frequency is all the stereo information. All the stereo information in your song is at both extremes of the speaker, right? So it's not center, it's not mono, everything is stereo. So the stereo image I'm gonna cut. So let's just listen to what is there in the stereo image. See, all the guitars, all the muddy guitars are there. So I'm gonna cut it till here. So my low end becomes nice and tight. So all of this area below, say, what is this? Somewhere around like 230, 220 hertz is all mono. So when you're listening to all of this in like say a car or on a phone, it's gonna sound really nice because of the mono-ness of it. So this is done. Now let's just do some subtle compression on this. So I like to use FG gray in this genre because I like how it tightens the low end. So I'm gonna do somewhere around 2:1 ratio. And barely like 1 or 2 dBs of compression. So I need to make the release a little faster. Listen to the low end, how tight it's becoming because of this compressor. So it's being triggered by the kick. So it's just like ducking when the kick hits and it's making it glued up, like it's sounding like very gluey. So, but I think it's overworking it a little bit. So I'm just going to use the sidechain filter so that it doesn't catch so much of the kick, right?
Yeah, hi Bhushan.
Hi.
I had a question actually.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, so I was asking, so when you apply stereo width to a track, how do you make sure that it translates to it being it sounding good on mono as well?
So what I'm doing is when I add stereo width to something, I don't add it to the low end. I add it to the super high end. So because of that, because see, I'll show you when I added stereo width to the guitars, I'll show you what that plugin does.
Okay.
See, so the stereo width, this mono maker thingy and the stereo width thingy. So this stereo width, this plugin, basically when you increase the stereo width, it increases the stereo width above a certain frequency range. So say around 1K, 2K, somewhere around that side image is boosted. So everything below that is going to be in mono. So it will still translate. If you're still scared of doing that, you can always use this mono maker. So which is essentially the mid-side EQ that I showed you. It is that, and you can just put it somewhere around 200, so which will do right now.
So, like
so it will always translate.
So you pan the guitars left and right.
Yeah.
So does this revert back? Like if you put like
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. But I mean, even if you are, even if it's like hard pan, it does bleed into like the So it does anyway. So, but because you're making it mono, it just that low end becomes mono again. So because of that, the low end of that instrument is mono technically. So it will still sound good on a phone. It will still sound good on like a mono sort of a Bluetooth speaker or something, right? So basically, like stereo width, when you apply stereo width to something, you just need to be very careful because if you're applying it to the whole frequency range, then you will have some sort of issues. Like you need to just have it on the high end. So I'll show it to you on your master. So when we did that, so on our Infinity EQ, so same side image, I can just boost this, make it into a side EQ. And now, see, I'm just boosting above somewhere around 5K, So that stuff is being boosted, but all the mono stuff below this is still mono and is mono as anything. It's extremely mono. So it is still going to translate. So, and to demonstrate that, what we can do is we can go to the mixer. You can hear it in mono. You can still hear the guitars. Right? So, I mean, they are low, but like you can still hear them. So basically, you need to dial that to taste. Like you need to figure out, what is more important and like, so let's just turn that down a little bit and then again listen to the master in mono. Just hold on. I mean, it's not completely disappearing. It's there. It's low. We can basically do this. We can add the mono maker and put this to say 620 hertz. And uske aage everything is going to be stereo. Right, let's go back to our master. See, we fixed that issue. Now everything under 600 hertz is mono. So even when you turn it to mono, it's still there.
Oh, okay.
So don't apply stereo width to the whole frequency range. Just apply it to like what makes sense,
Okay.
So yeah, that. So now we are done with the compression bit. No problem, man. So yeah, so then we're done with compression. Now let's just add some sort of color. We need to add some sort of color EQ, right? So I really like those full text style EQs, right? So basically, let's just there are multiple plugins that I have which emulate the full text, but like in this genre, I think I'm trying to do something really subtle. So let's just try the better maker. Just like the name says, just makes everything better. So now, if you see my frequency spectrum, the low end is very tight. The high end needs some help here. Right? So let's just boost the high end a little bit. So I'll just turn this here. And let's just boost somewhere around 6K, very subtly. I'll overdo it. Just making everything brighter. Yeah, this is sitting well for me. See, it's adding a lot of nice brightness and air to it. Without it, now I'm having some issues in this frequency range, being a little too harsh for me. So let me just find that frequency. Just gonna boost. This range, right? So somewhere around here, somewhere around 300 to 500. I think that it's a little too much, so I'm just gonna cut it a little bit. Very subtly. Now I think the vocals need to be a little louder. Sorry for this clip light. You're not supposed to clip, but I boosted like a crazy amount. So that's why I'm clipping. So, another cool thing to create headroom. Again, the quick and dirty way to create headroom. So let's just go to the Elysia Alpha Master. So this is a really cool plugin. So what you can do is you can just soft clip things and it creates so much headroom. So see, I haven't gain staged this nicely, so it is gonna clip a little bit. So if you have to fix it, see, it's clipping a little bit, like 0.2, right? So I'll just start the soft saturation. It created like 2 dB of headroom for me. So whenever you want to create headroom and you want to create perceived loudness to something, that's when you use some sort of clipper. Now, this is one of my favorite clippers. There are a bunch of options for you. We can, talk about that later. But I mean, this is what I would do in a situation like this. I'm not using anything else. I'm just using the soft clipper circuit in this. So it is just creating some headroom for me, right? So now after that, I'll just listen to it again. Still has 2 dB headroom, 1.7. I need some reverb on these vocals. So let's go to this nice and long. This, yeah. Sounds pretty nice to me. Now it's just time for your mastering limiter. So let's use BX True Peak. So now, before we do anything to the limiter, we need to see what levels we are at. So in my monitoring chain, after the spectrum analyzer, I have this loudness analyzer. This is also another free plugin. So this is sitting somewhere around -14 LUFS. So LUFS are loudness units full scale. Basically, like it's beyond the scope of this video, but what I can say is every streaming or every service that is there, every streaming service or YouTube or like whatever, they have like a fixed value for the LUFS that they accept and they stream at, or they just reduce it to that, right? So now say we had to stream this, or say we had to release this as a release on say Spotify or YouTube. They are gonna make it turn it down to say -14 in that general ballpark area. Our mix is somewhere around say 15, right? So what we need to do is we need to make sure that they turn it down a little bit at least, because if it's lower there, then they're gonna boost it, and you never know what they're boosting it with, what sort of limiter or what sort of algorithm they have. So it's better to go above that range, right? So that even if they turn it down by 2 dB or 3 dB, whatever, then it's still fine for us. If you want to do like super loud masters, which this genre is not really known for, but if you're doing something like dubstep, or if you're doing something like say any sort of EDM, you would go as loud as say -8, -6, -4 at times. The Skrillex songs and all those like super hard hitting dubstep songs are extremely loud, so they are like -4, -5 LUFS. So in this case, we are gonna go somewhere around like say 12 LUFS maybe. So let's see how hard we can crank it. Let's go to our mastering chain again. So this was our limiter. So so let's just move this around and let's see this value. It's the same value is displayed here as well. Crank it. I don't want to see more than like 2 or 3 dB of reduction on my limiter in this situation, because the more I limit it, the more distorted it's gonna get, and the more it's gonna sound very like distorted. So I don't want that. So I don't want to limit it too much. If I want to increase the loudness and still have some still not make the limiter work too hard, I'm gonna tweak my other things, like say the soft clipper, or like say the compression. I'll compress it a little more. I'll make it into a faster attack and catch the transients a little quicker. So basically for that, I'm trying to I really don't like my limiter working very hard, because it changes the sound, because we spent a while mixing this. So we don't really want to ruin that by just placing one plugin and ruining the balance and ruining the the feeling that we get he just hearing the mix. Even mastering engineers, what they are doing is they are making it as loud as possible without sacrificing the tonal quality, without sacrificing the sound of the, as transparent as it can get, and it has to translate really nicely to all elements. So for a quick and dirty master, we made sure that it will translate to most systems. Then we made sure that the low end is tight with the compressor. We boosted the high end a little bit, barely like 1 or 2 dB, because I think it needed that sparkle. Then we did some soft clipping to increase some headroom and shave off the super hard transients that poke our ears. And then we added a limiter to get it to a decent loudness, right? So because with this, I would be very comfortable sending this to a client who will be hearing it on God knows what speakers. So I'd be super comfortable in sending this. And whenever I am done with the production, I check it on like multiple sets of monitors, and I send this. If I am not mixing it, if there's some mixing engineer who's mixing it, I'll send a bounce of this file, which I have mastered right now. Like, mastering is like a very fancy term, but I just did like a basic, really quick and dirty master. So, but it is following my intentions. It is following the sound that I have in my head. So this would be a very good reference mix for my mix engineer, for him or her to understand, what is there to be done. And also he'll get an idea of what loudness I'm expecting. If you send it, every genre has its own loudness, so to speak. So I mean, if there is like a jazz song, you're not gonna turn it to like -6 LUFS. You won't do that. So generally speaking, it is always best to give your mix engineer this, and he or she will understand, okay, this is what you're intending, this is the sound you're going for. And it's a great reference, I think. And I think all producers should know all of these things. I mean, like, these are the basics, like, creating space in a mix, and creating loudness, and creating, assigning various frequency ranges to various instruments. All of these things are, very important for a producer, because at the end of the day, if your production sounds bad, say if I added another bass here, say if I added an 808, because like मैंने कहीं तो सुना था कि lo-fi में 808 use होता है, so I'll put an 808 here, and then it's gonna muddy up the mix. And then the mix engineer will be like, okay, I'm gonna put a low cut on the live bass because there are some fills, so they'll come out. And then, we barely did like 4 layers. There's just drums, there's guitars, there's bass, and there's some random effects. So within all of these, every member of the mix is getting a great space to be themselves. So, I mean, because of that, it's very easy to mix. It's very easy on, it's not very complicated. So it's going to translate to a lot of speakers and a lot of systems. And it's going to be mastered loud, because there are no things which are messing with the low end. There's no muddiness to it. So I think that's very important. So yeah, I think we are close to wrapping this up. We'll just listen to this once again and look at the spectrum and see what's happening. Just listen to थोड़ा पीछे से.
मुझे तो लगता है मैं शायद तेरे दिल की दुआ हूँ, हाँ, तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया. अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए, थम जाए, बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमियाँ. तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया. अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए, थम जाए, बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमियाँ. तुझको जो पाया.
I think I'm pretty happy with this. I mean, obviously it's not perfect, but I would be very comfortable sending this as a dummy idea to a client, and then we can take it from there. So maybe like the client or the composer who I'm working for likes certain parts or dislikes certain parts. Maybe like, he might like this idea. All these things, like, this is a great rough sketch to send to your employer, for lack of a better word, and take it from there. basically. So whenever you're producing, it's very important to have a clear communication with the the client or the composer that you're working for. And mostly most composers they generally do have an idea of what they're doing, so because of that it becomes very easy. But if it's the other way around, it gets very tough for you to just read their minds and try to get into that situation. But if your workflow is sorted, then just we divided our song in these parts, right? You can just identify the problems very quickly. If your composer says yaar isme bahut chords hai, if they say ki it's too busy or it's too so this is this repeat 2, I need to replace that with repeat 1. You're done in 5 minutes. You can send him a reference in 5 minutes without really if you really sit at it again, if you didn't do all of this homework before, if your composer tells you okay, I think it's very glitchy and choppy and the chords are too much, then you would go to your arrangement, you'll find all the effects elements that you put, then you'll see what snares you've muted and all of that. But if you do this beforehand, okay, repeat 2 was a little out there and repeat 1 was playing it safe, so just paste repeat 1 over there, and this B section is also pasted. Maybe he likes the B section, so maybe you can add something else over there and take it from there. So it's a very nice feedback system that happens. But you need to be able to read the person that is employing you and the person that you are trying to be over there. Say if you are known for something, you will always do it with your own sensibility. Like, see, I'm a guitar player. I would have easily played, it would have been easier actually to play some keyboards on top of this, like I just have a keyboard right next to me, and I would have just played some chords, and I would have just, whatever thought process that I had, I would have applied it to keyboards and I would have played those chords, right? But instead, it's nice to stick to your sensibilities, and it's nice to stick to your, your comfort zone and your home ground. So because that you can exploit yourself in it, like you can create something out of thin air because it comes so naturally to you. Like guitar is my first instrument, so I mean, like things come naturally to me. That 2-5-1 in D wouldn't have come to me on the keyboard. I don't think so it would have come to me. I would have stuck to something very simple. So take those risks, but be so organized that even those risks are safer than what you think they are. Because I know that this is a risk, this repeat 2 was a risk, and maybe the composer would say, ye kya kar diya, and stuff like that. So you always have a backup plan. You just put the first thing over there, and stuff like that. And as I said, like, I wrote it down here, like workflow is a default process that you follow irrespective of how creative you're feeling. That is my definition of workflow, because if you have a workflow, no matter how tired you are, no matter how fried you are, no matter how depressed or least creative you're feeling, you would still execute and you would still come up with something okay. So now I haven't slept all night yesterday, and just because of my workflow, like I could come up with something passable. I won't say this is like the best arrangement or like of this song ever, but yeah, it sounds fine to me. It sounds like a decent enough demo which I can send someone and get some feedback off of. So if someone approached me ki mujhe ye gaane ka, I want to recreate this song and stuff like that, so I would be very comfortable passing this around. Obviously I'll work on this later and like make it into a nicer, more good sounding arrangement, but overall I think this is like a decent enough arrangement to send to a client as a first draft. So yeah, I think we can do questions now, I think.
Yeah, let's go for a quick Q&A. So Johan has a question. He has put it in the chat. So what is your opinion on using 2 limiters?
2 limiters, right? So I used to do that before. But the thing is that I like to divide my limiter ka job with a soft clipper and a limiter. If you use 2 limiters, then obviously it looks fine to you that if you say have a gain reduction of 2 dB on one limiter and 3 dB on the other limiter, maybe you can shave off that 2 dB with a soft clipper, because a soft clipper is clipping it. It's not limiting it. It's literally clipping it. So because of that, the sound of it is more, it's perceived louder. Right, especially in like really intense genres, which like dubstep and EDM, they use like clippers a lot, and that is the sound of that genre, I think. So if you're doing a rock song, I would definitely use a clipper on the drum bus after I compress it, Like I'd add a gluey compressor on the drums, and then maybe I'll add a clipper to create that extra headroom and add that perceived loudness. So I would prefer that over using two limiters. Yeah.
We have a question saying, how was your experience working on Bhumi?
I always have a fanboy moment when I work with Clinton Cireo. Like, he's one of my idols, and I've been looking up to him since I was a kid, like playing guitar in school, right? So back then, folk studio and everything was like a very big deal, and it still is. But back then, it was like the thing, And then when I moved to Bombay, within some opportunities and some contacts or some chances and some risks that people took off of me, I got a chance to meet him and I got a chance to work with him. And it's such a big learning experience just being around him, even on the sets of Bhumi, like it's beautiful how he approaches music in general, and it's amazing. Like, I really like his workflow, I really like his taste, I really like everything he does. He's like a powerhouse. So I mean, it was beautiful. Like, there's not enough I can say. Like, there's so many things to that person. I'll tell you a small funny story. Like, when we rehearse for Shore Police, so I play guitars for Shore Police. So say his ears are so sharp, his ears are so like, intensely sharp, that if I play like a -7 chord and the seventh note is on top of the register, like if I end it with the top 7, just start with the, hey, Bhushan, I think you should avoid that 7th. Yeah, play the 3rd on top. And he's catching this in the middle of like the entire band playing, and it's amazing how we can hear all those details. And also it teaches me a lot about taste, because I know why he's saying that, because the 7th degree doesn't sound that great, on like in that register. If you play it somewhere around the root, like in the 2nd octave, like say you have a root, 5th and root again, and if you play a 7th instead of that 2nd root that you're playing, basically you play a 7th instead of the 8th, then it sounds great, So I mean, all these little things, these just being around him, it's very amazing. So yeah, that's about that.
Do you have a workflow out of the box?
Like hardware? I mean, are you saying that?
Yeah, even I did not get that question like pretty clear. Maitreya, can you be a bit more specific? And like, it would be better if you unmute and ask yourself.
Yeah, I was talking about analog gear and this all.
So the thing is that I am not very experienced with analog gear. The thing is that what I like about analog gear is that in the tracking stage, I would use like fancy preamps, I would use fancy mics, I would use fancy compressors. But in the mix stage, I think plugins do a great job. If your source is great, I think plugins do a great job. But again, like, I am no authority to say this, because I'm not like, I haven't worked in a studio with a bunch of analog gear and stuff. All the mixing that I've done in my life is in the box. So I've used great equipment, like to record myself. I've used great mics. I've used great preamps. I've used, all the fancy ass preamps that come with in the recording stage though, So that I can vouch for, because that does make a difference. If you have like some sort of like a Scarlett 2i2, and if you have like a really nice Neve preamp, or say if you have like a Manly Vox box or something like that, and if you run your DI through that, or like if you run your mics through that, it is gonna sound much better. And see, even if it sounds better or worse is your own opinion, but it is way easier to mix when you track through analog gear, because it takes all your processing so nicely. Like, if you, as I said a while back, we were talking about like, how to mix cheap mics. When you have a cheap mic, even if it sounds fine to you, it is not going to react really well to EQ and compression. When you track things on like expensive expensive gear and like good preamps and all of that, it is going to take your EQ and compression really well. It is going to easily sound the way you want it to sound without actually doing much. So it is going to take lesser moves. It's going to on your EQ and your plugins and whatever processing that you're using. So I think as far as I'm concerned, if I have the money, maybe I will invest in a lot of analog gear. But to start with, I'll go with some really nice preamps and some really nice mics. I think that's something that I would like to, put my money in first, rather than buying like a compressor first, or like a mix bus compressor or something fancy. Before that, I'll just start from the source. Maybe I'll buy a better guitar, then I'll maybe buy a better mic, and then I'll maybe buy a better preamp, and so on and so forth. So I think analog gear doesn't matter that much to me personally. So yeah, that's about that.
One really good question, like when do you know that you are overproducing?
Oh, again, let's go back to the Picasso, thingy. Like, so Picasso says perfection isn't not being able to add anything in, it's not being able to take anything away. Now, in this production that we did, even if I mute one layer, it's gonna sound like yaar kuch to missing hai, something is gone, So I can add so many things to this. I can spend hours adding those transitions and those effects and doing some panning and doing some weird thingies, But if I take something away from this, say if I take away this percussion, say we play this again. Maybe if I take this percussion off, this takka, I'll solo it. If I take that off, with it, without it, I want it there. I feel that it's missing. So, you shouldn't feel like, when you're done with producing something, say you take a really long time and you've produced everything, just go back and mute every layer and see if you can do without it. Is it okay if I don't keep this? Yeah, it's not adding anything to my any value to my production. So let's just mute it. It is better. Like, it's always better to mute something. So one of my really good friends, Saurabh Bhalerao, he has a very interesting workflow. What he does, he just adds whatever he wants. He does music for films, and he does a lot of background scores, and he produces songs as well, right? So his workflow is very interesting. Like, he will record every brain fart that he has, and he'll keep that in. And when he bounces out the stems, he'll take it to the mix engineer, sit with the mix engineer for 10 minutes. He'll just mute all the layers that he doesn't feel are working, so that it is another layer of insurance, like another layer of safety. He say if he thinks that it's not needed, but there's always another opinion, hey, this is working, why are you muting it? Stuff like that, right? So if you mute things later on, it's always better, but make sure that you are not taking, not missing something out, or not overcrowding it. So that's the only way to know. And also I think mixing and music is very close to food, like it's very close to say if you are eating a biryani, and a biryani can't be a biryani without chicken, so you can't mute the chicken. So, but you can maybe mute the dhania, or maybe you can mute the elaichi, or maybe you can mute these things which are there, which add something to it. But if it's not there also, it's sometimes better. I like biryani without elaichi, so it's good. Yeah. So maybe you can take it in that spirit, and then you can mute things and take decisions. And the best part about production and music, like, the sooner you realize that you need to commit to things, the better it is. Like, you can overthink the hell out of even like a small snare sound, but you just have to commit to it. Okay, this is what it is. I can't change it. Game over. Like, that's what it is. So the quicker you learn to do it, and you learn to live with your, live with your choices, the better producer you become, I think. So that's very important.
Next question is like, how do I go about learning guitar? So Jaideep says that he is like a self-taught guitar player, and also has a bit of training in classical vocals. But then still he feels stuck at, the guitar level playing, and he wants to get it to the intermediate level. So how does he take it there?
So, breaking news. I have been self-taught all through my life. I went and did some sessions with a few guitar players, but I never really went regularly. I just went to do some like workshops like these, like where somebody's talking and I'm listening types situation. So that's sort of a scene. But there are so many resources available to, the internet sort of generation now, because like when I started I started playing guitar in school, so I never really nobody sat and taught me. My mom bought me a guitar and I used to go to this class for like barely a few months. I just bought a guitar, I came back and I started learning off the internet. So the internet is a boon and a curse at the same time. You need to know whose opinion to take and whose opinion to totally, there are a lot of people who are just spreading bad, wrong things. There are a lot of people like that. And whatever you learn off the internet, you should be able to take it with a pinch of salt. So there are certain resources that I would recommend. There's justinguitar.com, which is like an amazing resource. He's one of the oldest and one of the most original YouTube and educators of the internet when it comes to guitar, and his courses are laid out very nicely. So even if like you don't have any idea what you're doing, you can just go to his website. There are a lot of courses. It's like taking an exam. You just take the course, you learn all of that, and you apply it to your instrument. And maybe there are some forms that you can give exams and all that. I think so. I'm not sure. That used to happen back in the day, but I'm not sure if it happens still. But that's there, and that's another great resource. And there are a lot of YouTubers who are there, but Jens Larson is one of them. Then this guy called Robbie Barnsby is one of them. So these people are so during the COVID times, these people, they had a lot of time on their hands because no gigs and nothing was happening, right? So they put out some really brilliant educational content on YouTube, as like their way of contributing to society in general. So there's some actual gold on the internet right now, but there's a lot of crap also. So you need to take everything with a pinch of salt and see what works for you. And you cannot know everything. Like if you watch this channel and he tells you, okay, you need to learn this. You watch another channel, he'll tell you, you need to learn this. You can't learn everything. It's impossible. So be realistic, be real to yourself. Okay, this is the amount of time I'm putting in, and this is the amount of progress that's going to happen. So the more real you are, the happier you will be, and the more linear progress you'll do. If you get overwhelmed with information, which the internet does to you on a daily basis, like it'll give you so many channels and so many creators, and then they'll be like, okay, this is what you should do and this is what you should do, and you'll be like, okay, and then you listen to each and every opinion and you try to make everyone happy, which is impossible. Just take it with a pinch of salt, trust yourself, and give yourself the respect that you deserve, and just keep at it and be real about it. As simple as that. So if you need any specific links for this, you can drop me a text, and I can give you all the links to all my favorite channels off of YouTube, which I still watch and learn from. Like, so even production channels for that matter, even that is also, there are a lot of great resources for that. You can learn absolutely anything these days. So yeah.
Sure thing. Any other questions, guys? I guess that's it.
Yep.
Bhushan, thank you so much, man. Like,
hey,
this was
pleasure,
so much fun, and like so much of information, like it's amazing. And we developed a song from scratch, and that was beautiful, like these folks out over here, you have what I could say, put that seed into these students, and I'm sure they'll take it ahead, and they'll take it ahead and make some great music, and ultimately it's making good music and making people happy. That's the thing.
Right.
So
thank you
so much, man.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, man. It was a pleasure. I had so much fun, making all of this.
Thank you so much, Bhushan.
Thank you.
We have one more question. Yeah. How do you approach a genre you don't know about? So that's a beautiful question again.
So I don't approach a genre that I don't know, first of all. But if I'm making lo-fi music and I have never heard lo-fi before, first I'll listen to a lot of lo-fi, and then I'll do it with my sensibilities, like any genre, that you have. I think your sensibilities are very important, because you should do lo-fi like you do lo-fi. Because if you try to ape someone, you're going to sound like that person and like a bad copy of that person. So I think you should put in your sensibilities. You shouldn't really bother, what people would say or what they would feel. And I mean, like, a lot of really successful people have told me that don't take yourself so seriously. Like, do your thing. I mean, like, we are all learning here. So I mean, I used to think about people, saying to me, hey, you're a guitar player, how can you be a producer? You don't know anything, or like, stuff like that. But I was like, hey, I want to explore this. I will do this. And because of the pandemic, I got the time to work on it. And then, people started taking notice. And I wasn't like, I was a session player. Like, I knew, I knew how to play guitar, and I was like average at best at that. Things were working, like, I used to do the job okay, like, so. But then later I applied the same sort of mindset to production. And similarly, I explored more genres. I sucked at a lot of genres. Then I started exploring them more. I put in the work, basically. That's the only way to, tackle a genre. But like, workflow wise, say if you want to learn a genre, like, the best resource is YouTube and Spotify. Go to Spotify, find a playlist, just keep listening to it and identify the things that you like. You don't have to like every music piece out there. Like, it's impossible. Like, you can't like an entire album also. Like, it's very rare that you like an entire album. Wow, this is the best, most beautiful. I like each and every second of it. It's very unlikely. So keep an open mind, listen to all the music that is put out there, and find curators who make these playlists, right? So there are certain curators who are music critics also, and they curate these playlists for YouTube and like Spotify. So I mean, I would take their word for it, basically. So if they put in this is dubstep, or this is lo-fi, or this is house music, or this is kawali, stuff like that. So I will take their word for it, and I would trust them. I mean, like, there has to be some credibility to that person, but I would trust that, listen to that, and keep an open mind and listen to all the elements that I like. Now, back in the day when I was like, I started playing guitar, like, I used to play all the heavier genres, like, I used to play, thrash metal and all of that stuff, like that typical journey that every guitar player in Pune starts. But later on, I realized that, if you see dubstep and if you see riff-based music, like if you play riffs on a guitar and if you see dubstep, it's quite similar. So I started making dubstep music, and that's when I realized, oh wow, this is like, this is giving me the same feeling. So I approached dubstep with the sensibility of a guitar player. So basically, keep an open mind and like just explore as much as you can. And whenever you make music, there has to be a piece of you in it. Like, you can't really you can't say, okay, I'll just download like a dubstep or like a lo-fi sample pack and I'll just make something out of it. And no, it has to be your own. Like, you have to change it, because then it's going to sound like any other dubstep, and you will get called for that. You will get called for you on the higher level. On the lower level, you will get called for anything, and you'll get called for being an intern, or you'll get called for being like an assistant. But if you want to climb the ranks, you need to have your own sound. Like, even in the guitar playing world, like whenever I get calls to play guitar on some song or like for a session or whatever, they generally call me for me, because they want what I do on their song. And that doesn't mean that I'm the best guitar player or like the worst guitar player or like an average guitar player. It's just that I am the right guitar player for that song, and that is where it all starts. So even as a producer, when you have a voice, when you have a certain genres ka understanding, that's when you realize, okay, this is my home ground, this is where I'm most comfortable in, this is where, so say if you are like a jazz guitar player, right, and if you have to make lo-fi music, so you can always make it, like you can play some nice jazzy chords, like put some RC20 on it, like reverb it out and put some fat beat on it, and it will sound great, So, but still, that doesn't mean that hey, I'm a jazz guitar player. Like, you know, I don't understand this. So you can't. You just have to approach it with your sensibilities. Like, take what you have. You know, like if you hear say lo-fi music, which is say you know, vocal sample based, you don't have to go out learning vocals for it. You know, if you're a guitar player, you need to learn. You need to put what you have with you in that genre. So keep an open mind and listen to as much music as you can and apply it. You know. So one more really cool thing that I like to do is I put out these remixes from time to time, right? So there's this thing called splitter.ai. So what I do is I put in any song, I just download it off YouTube or something, or like iTunes or whatever. And then I put it in that algorithm and it just splits out the stems for that song. So what I do is I take the stem, like now in this case, we had a vocal, you know, my friend was gracious enough to give us, you know, this vocal, but in case I didn't have this, I would have gone to splitter.ai, ripped the vocals off from that, and you know, would have taken it from there. So basically, I mean, that's a great resource to practice. You just rip the vocals and keep producing. कि अरे चलो इसको dubstep करते हैं, इसको lo-fi करते हैं, या फिर इसको acoustic करते हैं, या फिर whatever, right? So the more work you put in, the better you get. As simple as that.
Amazing. That was like a good master tip, you know, which one could have.
That was a rant probably.
Yeah.
like a big opinionated conversation.
Yeah. I guess that's it, Bhushan.
Yeah.
Once again, I would like to thank you, man. And
I mean, my pleasure, man.
yeah, it was great having you for this workshop, and looking forward to many more things with you.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes.
Finish it off by playing the song. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So let's play it from the pre-chorus, which is empty.
Yeah.
मुझे तो लगता है मैं शायद तेरे दिल की दुआ हूँ, हाँ तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया, अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए, थम जाए, बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमियाँ, तुझको जो पाया तो जीना आया, अब ये लम्हा ठहर जाए, थम जाए, बस जाए हम दोनों के दरमियाँ, तुझको जो पाया.
As a parting thing, I'd really like to thank my friend Sunit, man. He sang this so well. He just went for it, man. Like I gave him a click and he just went for it, and I didn't have to work on it at all. This is like a one-take performance. I chopped it a little bit, like I just time corrected a little bit, but that's about it. Like I didn't work on it at all. So big shout out to Sunit.
Yeah,
he's one of my best friends. So
amazing thing.
Thanks, Sunit, for doing this, and thanks, Atharva, for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you to CMedu for having me, and I hope you got some value out of this. And yeah. So again, if you have any other questions, you can always shoot me a DM on Instagram. And
I'll drop his Instagram handle. You know.
Perfect.
Yeah. So you guys can connect with him. You can follow him, and you know he'll be there for you guys anytime. Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Yeah. So students, you can leave now. Students can drop off.